Hello and welcome to IDZ Talks with Anastasia Laurina. Azerbaijan has reiterated its support for the territorial integrity of China following the recent presidential elections held in Taiwan. The Republic of Azerbaijan supports the One China's policy. It was stated by the Foreign Ministry of Azerbaijan last week. On the other hand, some Western powers sent the message of congratulations following the results of the elections in Taiwan. Why Taiwan's elections matter to the world. All details in my program today. Joining me from China, Wang Guan, who is a news anchor in China Media Group. Hello and welcome to IDZ Talks.
Great to be with you again, Anna.
Thank you so much. So the first question, why Taiwan's elections matter to the world?
It matters to the world because of the fact that our friends in the West did not necessarily understand the full history of the question of Taiwan. They believe that what exists on the other side of the island is the state of Taiwan or and de facto independent state, which is not the case. What exists on the other side of the mainland China, which is governed by Beijing, is a dissident minority regime that broke off from the Chinese mainland in 1949. And I repeat, it is a dissident minority regime which claims the exact same territory as Beijing does. So according to the island's own constitution, if you can call it a constitution. So you recognize either Taipei or Beijing. You can do both because both governments claim the exact same territory or almost the exact same territory. But our friends in the West do not look at it that way. Therefore, they claim that Beijing has been aggressive and assertive, and they suspect that there could be a military operation sooner rather than later. The issue of Taiwan concerns China-U.S. relations. It has always been the biggest sticking point of China-U.S. relations, and increasingly so. And China-U.S. relations, of course, concerns the world. If you look at the friend-shoring and shore-chaining of global supply chain, for the forming of military alliances against China, organized by the United States and its NATO allies. So this question is multifaceted, and of course, the island of 23 million people might seem insignificant, but I would say this is the elections, the local elections, I would add, in Taiwan is perhaps one of the biggest geopolitical events as we head into the year 2024.
And my next question, how Taiwan's elections in 2024 can change the relationship between China and the United States and the West itself?
Well, we don't know yet. We're still waiting and seeing how the United States would respond, how Beijing would respond, and more importantly, how the DPP party, with their leader, William Lai, getting elected as the next leader of Taiwan, would react. So far, I think the response from the Chinese mainland has been firm, but restrained. Our military, our Taiwan Affairs Office, our Foreign Ministry, and our Central Committee have all spoken about this issue. Basically repeating the same line as previously, that Taiwan is part of China. The responses from the United States is, of course, not good in the eyes of Beijing. And what's interesting is the response from other countries in the middle. For example, the Philippines. The president of the Philippines, Mr. Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos, sent a congratulatory letter to the leader of Taiwan, the newly elected one, calling him the president of Taiwan, which is really unusual because there are only 12 countries officially recognizing Taiwan, whereas over 180 countries recognize Beijing over Taipei as the only legitimate government representative of the Chinese people. So what Bongbong did in the Philippines is, let's put it bluntly, undiplomatic and politically incorrect. I don't know what's going on. Maybe because of his vested interests in the United States. He studied in Harvard, never graduated. He claimed that he had warm ties with China in the beginning, but now apparently he hasn't. Getting off track here. But really, I think this has been a sticking point between China and the United States. Should there be a reunification effort, be it targeted trade sanctions or targeted military operations, or even a full-out war, which we don't hope to be the case, I think Beijing is still calculating how the United States would respond. Would the United States respond by sanctioning Chinese enterprises and personnel like they did to Russia? Or will there be a full-scale financial, military, and trade and technology sanctions as they did to Russia? Or would there be a military response, boots on the ground from the United States and its NATO allies and its Asia-Pacific allies? Um, I think that there's no decision made whatsoever right now in Beijing. That's my personal observation. But soon enough, reunification would happen, and it should happen. That is a line increasingly reiterated by the very top leadership of China.
In my next question, I'm asking your personal opinion. Any chances for a dialogue between China and Taiwan in near future?
I think it's unlikely in the short run because the fact that there has been this de facto separation of the Chinese living on the mainland and the Chinese living on the island of Taiwan. So it's about emotional bonding and it's about mutual recognition in terms of proximity emotionally. And then because of the civil war in 1940s, there has been a 70-year plus de facto separation of the Chinese on both sides of the Taiwan Strait. What's happening right now, the trend is an increasing number of people living on Taiwan identify themselves as only so-called Taiwanese, instead of both Taiwanese and Chinese, which was the case during the Cold War and in the 90s and 80s. This happened also because of what we call the de-Sinicization campaign launched by the DPP, 去中化, which is getting rid of the Chineseness in the Taiwan identity, in Taiwanese politics, in Taiwan's culture, textbooks, school books. I traveled to Taiwan multiple times, and many serious scholars and historians would tell you that the Chinese language used on Taiwan and in the Chinese mainland are identical. The idioms, the culture, the customs, the food, hail from the same roots. Yet still, because of this de-Sinicization campaign, less Taiwanese young people identify themselves as both Chinese and Taiwanese. So I think going forward, we need more dialogue, not just from the political level, which I don't think will happen anytime soon, but on the grassroots level, there should be more students and youth exchanges. Those Taiwan friends come to the mainland and see for themselves.
Just to confirm, you cannot deny the fact that there is a risk of a military confrontation or a start of new war between the China and Taiwan.
No, I cannot deny that. As a researcher and a journalist and news anchor, from what I've heard and from my interactions with the policy elites here in Beijing and across China, I think no decision has been made yet, but the determination is ironclad. That is, there must be this reunification, that the longer it takes, the more complicated and complex it would get when it comes to reunify with Taiwan. And we're willing to do this at certain costs. If you think about the fact that the vast majority, if not 100% of the Chinese on the Chinese mainland support this move, this question is of paramount emotional, political, and diplomatic importance. The reunification. So I cannot rule out the possibility of a military confrontation, but the hopes are that there can be a minimal cost militarily, especially to civilians, when it comes to this eventual reunification, which Beijing repeatedly said that it would happen and it will happen.
And one more question. How does Beijing react to Azerbaijan's support the One China's policy?
I think Beijing would welcome such a move, such an expression and endorsement of One China policy, reiterated by our Azerbaijani friends from the very top level. In fact, a few months ago, when I was in Baku interviewing the president of Azerbaijan, President Aliyev, he told me that he would support One China policy, and he went one step further, saying that he would support the eventual reunification of the Chinese nation. And think likewise, President Xi and President Aliyev met or could talk to each other over the phone multiple times in the past 3-4 years. And territorial integrity is very important to the people of Azerbaijan. And I think it's with a great regret that we have observed multiple rounds of escalation in the security situation when it comes to threats to Azerbaijan's sovereignty. I think Beijing has called for peace, has called for has reiterated that it's important for a nation to keep its territorial integrity. So I think China will always be a reliable friend, a good partner, and a true brother when it comes to territorial integrity. I mean, China has a principled position. China has a very principled position. If you look at what Russia call the special military operation in Ukraine, what we call in China the Ukraine crisis. China, of course, stands with Russia. It also stands with Ukraine when it comes to territorial integrity. It has this long established relations with Russia, but Beijing has not recognized Crimea or the Donbass region as part of any country, as part of Russia, actually. So Beijing has a very principled position of defending its allies, but also, defending territorial integrity.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna.